When Flight 447 hit severe turbulence at 35,000 feet, passengers thought they were going to die. But nobody knew the quiet man in seat 17E was about to save everyone's life. Picture this. You're on a plane with your kid, storm clouds everywhere, lightning flashing outside your window. The plane starts shaking like crazy. Then the captain's voice comes over the intercom and he sounds scared. Really scared. That's exactly what happened to Mark Thompson and his 8-year-old daughter. Sarah, on their flight from Denver to Miami last summer, Mark was just another single dad trying to make it work. After his divorce, he'd been doing his best to juggle work and raising Sarah alone. This trip was supposed to be fun. Just him and his daughter, visiting her grandparents in Florida. Sarah had her favorite teddy bear, clutched tight in her arms as she stared out the window at the storm brewing. Outside, the flight started, normal enough. Mark helped Sarah buckle her seatbelt, made sure she had her coloring books and snacks ready. He was tired from working double shifts at his construction job. But seeing Sarah's excited face made it all worth it. She kept pointing out the window, asking about the clouds and why they looked so dark. About 2 hours into the flight, things went sideways fast. The plane hit turbulence that felt like riding a roller coaster blindfolded. Drinks went flying, overhead bins started rattling, and you could hear people gasping and crying. Sarah grabbed her dad's arm so tight it hurt, her teddy bear falling to the floor. Then the lightning hit. Not just regular lightning, the kind that lights up the entire sky and makes you feel tiny. The plane shook so hard that even the flight attendants looked worried. That's when passengers knew something was really wrong, Upton. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, but this time he didn't sound calm and collected like pilots usually do. His voice was shaky, almost panicked. Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing severe weather conditions and some technical difficulties. If there are any military pilots on board, please press your call button immediately. The cabin went dead silent. You could practically hear hearts beating. Military pilots? Why would they need military pilots unless something was seriously wrong with the plane? Most passengers just sat there frozen. But Mark's hand slowly reached up and pressed his call button. Sarah looked up at her dad, confused. "Daddy, why did you do that?" she whispered. Here's what nobody on that plane knew. Mark wasn't just a construction worker. Before Sarah was born, before his marriage fell apart, before life got complicated, Mark had been Captain Mark Thompson, an F-16 fighter pilot with over 200 flight hours and multiple combat missions under his belt. He'd left the military when Sarah was born because he wanted to be there for his daughter, not deployed halfway around the world. A flight attendant rushed over to Mark's seat. "Sir, did you press your call button?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "Yes, ma'am. I'm former military, F-16 pilot," Mark said quietly, not wanting to scare Sarah more than she already was. The flight attendant's eyes went wide. "Please come with me immediately." Mark squeezed Sarah's hand. "Sweetheart, Daddy needs to go help the pilots for a few minutes. Mrs. Johnson here is going to sit with you, okay?" He nodded to the kind elderly woman across the aisle who'd been chatting with Sarah earlier as Mark made his way to the cockpit. He could feel every eye on the plane watching him. The storm outside was getting worse. Lightning was hitting so close you could smell it, and the plane kept dropping and climbing like it was fighting for its life. Captain Rodriguez met Mark at the cockpit door. His face was pale and sweaty. "Thank God, I'm Captain Rodriguez. We've got multiple system failures. Lightning fried our navigation, autopilot's down, and we're flying blind through this storm. I've got 20 years of commercial flying, but nothing like this." Mark stepped into the cockpit and immediately felt that familiar rush. All those years of training kicked in like muscle memory. The instrument panel was lit up like a Christmas tree, all the wrong colors. Red lights everywhere, alarms beeping, and through the windscreen, nothing but black storm clouds and lightning. "What's our situation?" Mark asked, slipping into that calm, focused voice he used to use in combat. "We're at 31,000 feet, about 200 miles from Miami. Lost contact with air traffic control 15 minutes ago. GPS is down, compass is spinning like a top. I've been trying to navigate by landmarks, but I can't see anything through this storm," Rodriguez explained. Mark studied the instruments. This was bad, really bad. Without navigation systems, flying through a storm like this was like trying to drive through fog with your eyes closed. But Mark had been in worse situations over hostile territory where failure meant not just his life, but his entire squadron. All right, here's what we're going to do, Mark said, taking the co-pilot seat. I'm going to help you hand fly this bird out of the storm. We'll use basic instrument flying and dead reckoning. It's going to be rough, but we can do this. For the next 30 minutes, Mark and Captain Rodriguez worked together, like they'd been flying as a team for years. Mark's military training took over completely. He helped navigate using backup instruments, calculated wind drift in his head, and guided them through the worst parts of the storm using techniques he'd learned flying through sandstorms. In the Middle East, the passengers had no idea what was happening up front. All they knew was that the plane was still shaking. Lightning was still flashing, but somehow things felt different, more controlled. Sarah kept asking Mrs. Johnson where her daddy was. "He's helping fly the plane, dear," the old woman said softly. "Your daddy must be very special." Back in the cockpit, Mark was in his element. Turn left 15 degrees, descend to 28,000 feet. "See that gap in the clouds at 2 o'clock? That's our way out." His voice was steady and confident. Captain Rodriguez followed. Mark's guidance exactly. Years of commercial flying had taught him to trust his instruments. But Mark was teaching him to trust his instincts and skills when the instruments failed. Suddenly, they broke through the storm clouds. The lightning was behind them. The shaking stopped, and through the windscreen, they could see clear skies and the lights of Miami in the distance. "There she is," Mark said with a smile. "Miami International." About 50 miles out, Captain Rodriguez let out a huge sigh of relief. "I don't know how to thank you. Without your help, I honestly don't know if we would have made it." The landing was smooth as silk. As the plane touched down and rolled to the gate, passengers started cheering and crying with relief. They still didn't know exactly what had happened, just that somehow they'd made it. Through the worst storm any of them had ever experienced, Mark made his way back to his seat where Sarah was, waiting with her teddy bear. "Daddy, you were gone so long. What were you doing?" "Just helping out, sweetheart." "Nothing to worry about," Mark said, buckling himself back in. But Mrs. Johnson was looking at him with new eyes. "You're the pilot who saved us, aren't you?" she whispered. Mark just smiled and put his finger to his lips. Some heroes don't need recognition, they just need to know their little girl is safe as passengers. Filed off the plane, Captain Rodriguez made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that we had some very serious technical difficulties during that storm. Thanks to a passenger who happened to be a former military pilot, we made it safely to Miami. Sometimes guardian angels come in, unexpected packages. People started looking around, trying to figure out who the mystery pilot was. But Mark and Sarah had already disappeared into the crowd. Just a single dad and his daughter, heading to see Grandma. And Grandpa like nothing had happened. That quiet person sitting next to you might just be the one who saves your life when everything goes wrong.